What's up, guys? So, I know I haven't been on in a very long time. I've actually been dealing with a lot of things. I have a lot of fodder for content. And so hopefully I'll be able to get things together to just be able to share it in a very constructive way. Because one of the things that I do believe is that we don't go through things just for the sake of going through things. But when we believe in God, we understand that there's purpose in everything. And so when we go through, it's not just for the sake of going through, but it is to get through it so that you have a testimony that you can share with somebody else and help them to get through. My pastor preached this morning just about how we are more than conquerors. It's one thing to be a conqueror, and when you're a conqueror, you simply prevail over something, you conquer something, you win at something, you get through the storm. But when you are more than a conqueror, and the Bible says that we are more than conquerors through Jesus, when you're more than a conqueror, not only do you get through it, but you get through the storm and you're all the better for it. And so I do believe that we go through what we go through to not only be overcomers, but to be more than conquerors, because it makes us better. And then in turn, when other people go through what we've already been through, we can share a testimony about how God is able to bring us through that certain thing. So like if he did it for me, then he can do it for you, that type of thing. So anyway, I've been struggling with something for probably the better part of 20 years. And, it's uterine fibroids. And, just over the course of the years, it's gotten progressively worse, the symptoms that I experience. And those symptoms have ranged from just, it started out, just having, heavy periods. And truthfully, I've dealt with that so long, I thought that was normal. I thought it was normal to be on your period and be exhausted. I thought it was normal to have excruciating cramps, to the point where you had to be literally medicated to get through the pain. I thought it was normal to feel sluggish and, in many cases, for your period to last longer than 7 days. All of that became commonplace for me. However, in recent years, again, it's gotten worse. And so I've had this year alone 2 blood transfusions because the heavy bleeding has caused me to be anemic. And, for those of you who are not sure what anemia is, in layman's terms, because I'm not a doctor, but how it was explained to me was that your hemoglobin, or your red blood cells, I believe, are low. So I think in women, the count should be 12. But in many cases, my periods were so heavy that, my count would get down to a 6. And so, and I think at 7, when it gets down to 7, they give you a blood transfusion. And so after my second blood transfusion back in March, I said, listen, I cannot have another period like this. And I had been exploring many different options. I'd been on different medications. And this final time I went to the doctor, and my doctor simply told me, listen, we're running out of, medication relief for you. As far as medications are concerned, we're running out of options for you. And so he gave me my options as far as surgical procedures, went. Many women who deal with what I deal with ultimately have to have hysterectomies, meaning that their uterus is just entirely removed. And I've actually known some people, or I know some people who went with that option. For me, because back in 2014, I had a surgery where my abdominal muscle had to be cut. And for those of you who have had those kinds of surgeries, you know that that is no joke. The recovery is really hard, and it's really hard to bounce back from those. And I just really didn't want to go through another surgical procedure like that. And so I watch a lot of reality TV, and I remember there were a couple reality stars on the shows that I, frequently watch, who dealt with this problem. And there was a place in another state that did this procedure, minimally invasive procedure called uterine fibroid embolization. They call it that in some circles. In some circles, they call it a uterine artery embolization. And so I had been looking into that. I had been reading about that. And so finally, I found a place in my area that I live in, and I went for a consultation. And so the consultation consists of a pelvic MRI, and then you meet with a radiologist, and they look at your scans and they determine whether or not you're a good candidate. And so my doctor, who you'll be meeting at some point, because I plan to chronicle this, looked at my scans and, determined that I was the perfect candidate for this procedure. He said, because I had a whole lot of nice sized fibroids. In fact, my gynecologist, to give me some context, told me that typically the uterus is like, well, I won't get into numbers because I'm not a math person, but basically he told me my uterus was the size of someone about 4 months pregnant, right? That the fibroids in my uterus have enlarged it so much so that when you're looking at my uterus on scans, it's the size of a woman who is 4 months pregnant. And just a lot comes with that, in addition to the symptoms that I have. So anyway, the radiologist said I would be a perfect candidate. And basically what they do with this procedure is they basically block the blood flow to the fibroid tumor, because fibroids are benign tumors, non-cancerous, but just annoying. And so what they do with this procedure, they block the blood flow so that essentially the fibroid shrinks and dies, basically. And, there have been a lot of success stories. They're not necessarily sure how this affects fertility, because that had been another issue for me, infertility. But in some cases, women have been able, after having this procedure, have been able to carry, children to term. Some have not, though. And the science is still relatively new in that regard. At any rate, tomorrow morning, it's about 11 o'clock. So tomorrow morning, I will be going to have this procedure done. And when I say, there are all kinds of things going through my mind, obviously, whenever you have to have any kind of procedure, there's a little bit of angst. But my hope is to obtain some relief, because anybody struggling with fibroids and endometriosis and things like that, you know that it's just not an easy thing. And as I said, in recent years, it's just gotten worse, to the point where you know, I simply can't take having the type of periods that I normally have any longer. So, um, I'm gonna get off now, and we'll pick back up tomorrow morning as I'm on the way to the hospital. Wish me luck.